I think my presentation is the last in this session. And I will talk today about the two very big markets, India and ASEAN. And you may ask, okay, why? All the previous speakers were talking about one topic or one country or region. But I think I'm lucky because I will talk about two markets that are growing. And we will see like good graphs with the growth finally. But let's have a look about what we will talk today. We will try to find what is similar aspects between India and ASEAN in the steel markets and the outlook and trends. What is the different features for each of this region? Also, what is the impact of the Trump's tariffs, export potential, and the raw material structure, because it's very different for the two regions. And we will start with India. I think I like this graph because even we don't need the figures here. And it shows us that steel production goes up in line with consumption. And this is like really good. But what I'm always asking myself, will it continue? Like, should we be worried that it will end tomorrow or not? And India says, no, don't worry. It will continue. I would say that the past fiscal year that finished in March this year, it was like too good in terms of consumption. It was 11.5 growth in finished steel demand, and it was above expectation. For the current fiscal year, expectation is around 8-9, which is still great. And if we are talking about the long term, in the coming 5 years, it's expected to grow by 6% annually, until it will bring us around 43 million tons of the demand in these 5 years. And actually, this is like more than the annual steel production in Turkey. So, sounds impressive. Of course, this is just predictions, what official government expecting and analysts. But still, as you may see, the growth was very sustainable for the past 5 years. So I think till now we can believe that it will be like this. Should we be worried about the steel production going up faster than demand? I would say from the first side, if you have a look on the past year, the speed of the increase in crude steel capacity was like the highest over the past 10 years. It was 19 million tons added. And it looks like something bad sign. But if we'll have a deeper look how India is growing, it's mostly not greenfield steel projects. This is expansion of already existing plants. And I would say for the upcoming future, all this 300, there is 300 million capacity aim till 2030. And till now, even not half, even not 20% of all these new capacities are approved. So we do not expect that it will be that fast and in such a short period of time. And for now, even with the current growth, I would say that the crude steel production growth is justified and goes in line with consumption increase. Of course, I need to say a few words about the Trump's tariffs because India got 50% in the last tariffs. And of course, it's not impacting steel producers, but it just closed the door for the pig iron sales from India to US fully. But in terms of the Section 232, 50%, it will impact, of course, some part of Indian export, but you may see on the right graph that total sales, even though they increased a lot in the first half of 2025, but it's still 10 or even less than 10% of the total Indian steel exports. So I would say it's rather manageable, let's say, consequences. Now, what is India in the global steel market? I would say that imports, it's a major trend now we see in India, because India is became the net steel importer for the second year in a row. And you may see that the same fast imports were going up, the export was going down. Of course, there is a reaction as usually, like countries reacting to increasing imports. And in April this year, India recommended like 12% safeguard duty, and it will be for like 3 years, recommended for 3 years. And I would say that usually safeguard measures working, but you can have a look on the graph, and I will remind you that before, from 2015 till 2019, India already had safeguard measures. It was like floor price. And there is no any reduction in imports in that time, in 2011, on like 18 or 19. Why? Because like sometimes the measures are not like efficient, not working well. But I would say that this time they are working like good. And you may see that starting from April, the monthly import volume already fell to like 140,000 tons, and this is more than 2 times less than on average last year. This time the measures, they have like better like support to the local market, and some of the sellers that were choosing to sell to India, for example, Japan or China, they are not very efficient anymore. Okay, in terms of exports, it's falling it's like obvious. And the peak of the export was in 2021-2022 fiscal at 13.5 million tons. At the moment, it's around 5 million tons. So the drop in export is critical, but you may see that starting from May 2024 till now, the monthly average export is more or less steady, which means that Indian mills, they are focusing firstly local market and then some profitable sales to maybe Europe, maybe Middle East, but it's not like the necessity, and all the like focus is on the local market. And here is only one small but. Currently and in the near future, like 1 or 2 years, of course, export is not a necessity for Indian mills with such a growth of consumption. But if we will remember, and if all the capacities they are planning will come on stream, there is a projection that the share of export should increase to 7–10%, and now it's like slightly less than 5%. So like export potential is there, but it's not necessarily needed right now and in the coming years. A bit different situation is in semis export, because I was not telling about the major exporting item, which is like flat steel, HRC. But in semis, you may see that in the first half of 2025, exports increased like a lot, more than doubled. Of course, it's presented mainly by slabs, and the billet exports still like not much, like monthly, like let's say 20K per month they can export. But this is showing some trends that we may see time to time on the export market. So there is possibility to sell slabs from India. There is some billet that could be exported, but mills are not doing this and can consider to export only if there is like profitable sales and some, like effectiveness of the sales economically. But we do not believe that this trend will continue and last because they need it. No, it's just like complementary export, I would say. Of course, talking about India, it's very interesting to have a look on the structure of raw materials, because India is a very unique country with 3 main steel production routes. First of all, okay, the biggest one is BF-based producers. It's over 40%, okay. And they have efficient production because India has own iron ore, and the production of iron ore actually peaked last year, and it was just slightly below 3 million tons, like impressive. They have it like cheap, at home, perfect. Of course, import coking coal, they are very dependent on the import. 90% of the whole coking coal, like premium coking coal they need, they import from Australia as a major source. But if we have a look on the 2 other roads, the second one wouldn't be electric arc furnace. The second one would be induction furnace. Induction furnace accounted for the past fiscal for 38% of the total steel production in India. and EF was like 25%. And these two routes using like mostly local sourcing. India is the biggest DRI producing country in the world, so they have own DRI. They have own scrap generation, which is not small, and only partly they may import scrap. We will talk about the imports and scrap later, but I would like to point out that even though they are big in the global market in terms of scrap imports, the consumption and sourcing is still mainly locally, and all the growth expected in the local market as well. So for the scrap imports, I showed you in the very beginning the crude steel production dynamics, and it was up every year over the past 5 years, right? Do we see the growth in the scrap imports? No. Actually, last year, imports dropped by 20%, which is huge. And even though it's rebounded in the first half of this year, it's still, you may see by like monthly, it's still far below 1 million tons per month. So what is the problem? You have growing demand, you have growing production. Why you're not importing scrap? And the answer will be very easy. It's cheap own DRI. So if in your country you have like the annual production of DRI is 55 million tons. And you can, I just presented some like prices here just to represent. So in September, in some regions, in some areas, in India, sponge iron, local DRI, was more than $50 cheaper than the benchmark imported shredded. Of course, if you're an induction furnace producer and you can use 70% of DRI in your production, you will not bother with importing scrap. You will just use more of DRI. And actually, in this graph, where you can see the production of sponge iron, the pace of growth of like DRI production was higher than even crude steel in India because of the need. And again, I said you before that the sponge iron, it's like very effective product. I mean, they have own sources. It uses own iron ore and non-coking coal. So this is why they are doing this. And this is all because of the market. So it's, yes, do India need more scrap? Yes. But India need more resources as a whole. And if they can substitute sometimes, they will use to substitute and to balance the cost. And the other reason also, like I just mentioned, because it's like obvious, for the sellers, Indian market is also not one of the like best ones. In terms of volume, yeah, India is like really big in South Asia and in Asia as a whole. But in terms of the price, lately, like I took the latest prices in September, mid of September, Indian price is $16 less, like the tradable level. The same shredded, the same in containers, but the Bangladesh and Pakistan can, like buyers, can give like better price. Obviously, this is also one of the reasons. Just like one word about the raw materials export, because I said that India producing like a lot of own raw materials, and iron ore export is like just 10% of the whole production, and it's last year, for example, it dropped by 35% because of the less usage of the low-grade iron ore. You know, it's not that popular in China anymore, and they're like doing their switch. Also, pig iron exports, it's not very frequent at all. And you may see that orange was the sales to US. Now there will be no this orange. Without the like orange lines, it's like nothing. So we will not worry that this is something, the trend we need to follow. Okay, that was everything that I wanted to say about India. I think I have some time for ASEAN. And all my figures will be for ASEAN 6 countries, but the focus will be on Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, because this is the growth rate in terms of production, consumption, and like everything. The same story about demand. Demand is going up good. But I like just have a look that in 2023, there was like a big drop in demand, and it was not very expected, the same as in 2020. Okay, like this year, like in 2024, we don't have figures, but estimation that the demand increased by roughly 4.5%. And this year, in 2025, it's expected to grow again by 2–3%. And this looks like good, but if we just compare 2025 prediction and the result that we have in 2011 and 18 and 19, the volume, the figure, is still less. So even despite some increase in demand, the sustainability is not there. And we cannot say that like ASEAN region is growing the same sustainable as India, for example. But production is more sustainable in terms of growth. I don't know if it's good or bad, mainly maybe second. There was some contraction in production in 2022 and 23 because of that unexpected drop in demand. And it again increased last year. But if you compare the same 2024 level and the good old times to 2018-19, now production is roughly 10 million more than it was before. So ASEAN as a region did a job and built some capacities to serve this demand. Demand was lower than expected, and this resulted in the situation we have right now. ASEAN region, the same as India, is a net steel importer. But you may see that the import volume itself is like twice bigger than export. And now we have like two major trends. First trend, it's like the great, very fast increase in terms of export volumes. The estimation for 2024 is 25 million tons of export per year for all countries in the region. 70% of all this figure is longs, semis, and only some small part of the flats, because as you may know, the developing region, they just started to increase the production of flat steel. And the consumption of flats is very big. That's why the export is like just started to grow this year. And in terms of imports, I would say that imports is going down, but in a longer view. But if we will have a look at just 1–2 years back, it's really stable because they still need the material, and the consumption is more than they can serve locally. I will stop here because ASEAN is one of the rare regions who are active in longs exports. After China, I would say this is a major sources of export. With Malaysia, I am in this chart, this is a half a year. Half of the last year, because we don't have figures for the whole year. So you may say that Malaysia is the biggest exporter. The whole longs exports is around 5 million tons per year. And it's increased in the past 2 years, I think more than doubled. And if you will have a look on the products, I would say rebar is mostly staying in the region, and wire rod have a different geography, very different. And you may see in the Asian region, wire rod exports is accounts for 40–41%, and Europe accounts for 27% of the whole long steel export from the region, which I would say is big. The same as USA. Vietnam was increasing their bar exports, especially owing to USA. Now it will be changed. Exports of longs products increased, and it was expected, but at the same time, semis are going down. I would say that semis export was even more the bigger focus for ASEAN than longs. But you may see that the billets export on monthly basis, for example, we will take July of this year, it was less than 100,000 tons. For me, as a market reporter, this was surprisingly, because we used to see 500,000 tons. Last year, it was something we were following. And of course, it's reflected in prices. Who took this market share? Of course, China. Even though the price gap is not that big, China billets are, for this year, I would say, starting from the end of the last year, the price for Chinese billets better than Indonesian or Malaysian. This is the slide for slabs. I will not stay here for a long time because this the dynamics for Indonesia and Malaysia is the same, and only Vietnam is holding the export volume stable at around 1 million tons per year. And both other countries, Indonesia and Malaysia, they are reducing like a lot, like they are halving their exports. And the next slide will be the answer why they don't like to use, like to export more billets and slabs. Because of the new capacities. I remember that in the IREPAS meeting in Paris a year ago, I was telling that this trend that ASEAN mills would like to go to the flats export. They would like to switch there, but we didn't have figures there because they were just trying to enter. And now we have the figures, and this trend is there. And I would say that Indonesia and Malaysia the most active, and they are selling like, they can sell from 100 to 200,000 tons monthly, each of them. And Vietnam is really fighting with like imports and trying to increase the local share. So for Vietnam, even though it's one region, the trends are different, even for the flat steel. Of course, talking about ASEAN, I wanted to add this slide. This is not the whole list of the capacity expansion that they have. They have like list like 3 times bigger than this. I just took the biggest one and based on the mills already existed or had even some approvals, something. But you may see that the all expansion plans, they are most of them, I would say like 80% are for flats. They are not going to build more like basic rebar wire rod production lines. And this is the first. And the second, you may see that some of the big mills that already started will have just to look for Eastern Steel, for example. They were growing and they launched their HRC production last year. They expanded. They are now stably selling in the market, and they were planning to expand like really fast. They said like we need 1 year just to increase. Now this project postponed. Why? Because they are seeing, of course, they are partly export oriented, but they're just trying to have a look on the demand. If demand is not growing same fast, you will postpone project at least for some time. For scrap, I would say that there is not much to say in terms of ASEAN, because as you may see, the most capacity expansions we saw over the past 5 years were blast furnace based. That's why I would say the scrap imports to the region more or less stable, and Vietnam is dominating the imports of scrap. So conclusions, I divided the conclusions by 2 parts. First parts, were India and ASEAN similar? They have good consumption outlook, both of them. India is stronger. India is projected to grow by 6%, ASEAN only 3%, but still this is a common increasing thing. Production. Of course, there is oversupply risks in both of the region, but I would say that in India, production growth is more healthier. It's like it's more justified than in ASEAN, and we need to remember that most of the capacity expansions in ASEAN, they have Chinese investment, so they are partly export-oriented. Trump's tariffs will be like bad, of course, but it will be manageable for both 2 regions, and the whole sales, I calculated that ASEAN and India together, they exported per year less than 2 million tons. But CBAM issue will be for the both of the region, because not only flats, but also longs will be impacted from ASEAN, because now, for example, Indonesia doesn't have the quota in Europe. And they have these volumes, and even the producers, they know that it will be gone like soon. In terms of different things, we are expecting that for imports, it will go down in India for sure, and in a longer time, we are not worrying for the next 3 years, let's say. And for the ASEAN, we expect it to be stable. But in terms of exports, I would say that ASEAN have like export potential bigger than India, and it's obvious. And India may have some export potential only after we will see at least half of the new capacities will come on stream. In terms of raw materials, I would say that India is still one of the bright spots in terms of scrap imports and consumption, because they expect that in the coming 5 years, till 2030, the consumption of scrap will grow by roughly 20 million tons to 65 million tons per year. This is all from my side. Thank you so much for attention. And now, if you have any questions for our speakers. So, yeah, please, we have some questions from the floor.
First of all, congratulations on what I thought were 3 fantastic presentations. Incredibly rich in data. I feel I need kind of about 3 hours to go through each of them when I get home, so thank you guys. My question is actually aimed at Mrs. Yang Li, who gave us some optimism that China will continue to use lots of steel because you feel that you're going to change from a basic steel economy to an engineering economy, and you're going to follow the German model, which will be great if it happens. And my concern is that in China, we're already seeing it being attacked for its engineering products. Lots of examples, 100% duty on electric vehicles, solar panels, mobile phones, the list could go on, which I never saw in Germany 60 years ago. You know, well, Germany didn't have to stop exporting its cars because people were attacking them. So I'd like to hear a bit more justification from you about why you think China, despite that, can follow the German model.
Yeah, I've got my headphone here. Sorry, I'd like to confirm your question. You are asking why China is following the German model.
Well, you were arguing that China is going to continue to consume a lot of steel because you're going to have a very competitive manufacturing base, and that's how China will continue to use a lot of steel. And my point is that China, unlike Germany, is being attacked for its finished products as well, and I gave a few examples. So I'm concerned that China won't be able to maintain its competitiveness because, you know, if you have 100% duty on an electric vehicle, you've got to be very competitive to compete with Mr. Elon Musk in California, for example. So are you really going to be able to?
I think that's a problem of confidence. I'm more confident about Chinese steel manufacturing competitiveness in the future.
Mr. Murat?
Thank you very much. My question would be for Mr. Rami Saleh. We all know that Egypt has some provisional safeguard duty on billet imports. How do you think this is going to have, what kind of an impact do you think this is going to have on the domestic market and international billet prices?
Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Murat. That's a very important question for sure. I think there will be a significant impact for sure because we're not having the time for that constraint of the presentation to stress on the major countries within Africa. But Egypt last year imported like 2 million tons of billets. So obviously 2 million tons, you know, okay, let's say not particularly all of them because some people can import for re-export. But to be honest, I don't think also there is a big room for that because typically the typical exporters out of Egypt are 3, AS Steel, Suez Steel, and ourselves at Maragbi Steel. Historically, AS Steel and Suez Steel, they haven't, you know, let's say used this option largely. So I think there will be a big hit because 2 million tons were not small in today's dynamics. And also, there will be a big hit to Russia particularly, because Russia was dominant in the market this year in terms of the billets. So last year, let's say maybe China was also exporting a lot, but this year having Russia and there are a lot of doors closed in front of them, they are sending the material very fast. And for rebars, which is very elastic in pricing, you cannot wait for lead time coming from China. So that's why Russia this year, captured the ground. So I think that there will be having a big impact. But going forward, because the provisional measures, those are first of all provisional measures, and they are there for 200 days till the investigation will be completed. What will happen after 200 days, I don't know. Because actually in Egypt also there is a big voice for the rolling mills. The rolling mills capacity is around 4 million tons. And some mills in Egypt, they are trying to sell them billets, but the quantities are limited. So there will be like a chaos about, back and forth discussion whether, let's say the safeguard will be transformed from provisional into definitive measures or not. Let's see, but on the short term, there will be a negative impact on the billet export, especially from Russia, in my opinion.
Thank you very much.
You are most welcome.
Rami, may I add one small question to your answer? Because it's interesting. I remember that last time Egypt made, like, let's say similar 16% of safeguard measure.
Yes.
It was in 2019.
Right.
Do you expect that the impact this time will be the same on the market? So do you see this, like, let's say nothing changed?
That's a good question. I think it might be a little bit different this time because the dynamics of market changing. I mean, market also in the past few years was less than the market size in 2019. So I think the impact will be bigger, I think even on the rolling mills, because the rolling mills were ramping up their utilization. They reached 50% or close to 50%. In my humble opinion, if the safeguard on the billets will be in place, I think the rolling mills utilization will be dropped to as low as 15% or something.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, because the market is not growing in any case. So it's like, okay, and there will be a little bit of improvement for sure on the utilization of crude steel production, which has been dropped. If you follow the statistics for the first 8 months, crude steel production in Egypt is lower than last year. And Saudi, for example, they have taken the first place of our region in the first 8 months. That was because of the billets. So now if the billets, disappeared, the crude steel production will a little bit improve.
I see. Do we have any questions from the floor, more?
Thank you. I have one more question. This time it's going to be for Nushi Zhangli. Thank you very much for your presentation. Well, China used to have a ban on scrap imports in the past, but the policy have been improved, and now, as far as I understand, China is looking more for higher quality grades of scrap and so on. Obviously, there is this green steel initiative going on in China as well, and probably more scrap will be needed. How do you foresee the development of scrap imports into Chinese market during the coming years?
Steel scrap imports has been very limited in the past many years because of this import trade policies. But as China is shifting towards, lower carbon emissions steel industry, we sure will need more steel supplies, scrap supply in the future. But and in the near term, I think the scrap imports will will not increase as much as people expected, because compared to iron ore, scrap is not that economic reasonable to import. But in the future, I believe still scrap imports will increase in the future.
Okay, do we have more questions?
I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So interesting what's happening in India, but I'm just curious, I don't know whether you have this technical information or not. Replacing the DRI with the scrap, there is always a big challenge with transporting DRI because it's very flammable. So do you think that, I mean, those like a kind of integration entities, so they are having the DRI and they are having the induction furnace, or they have their ways to transfer the DRI to mills that are in need of? Because, you know, typically from my, I mean, previous technical experience, it's very hard to transport the DRI.
You are true, but they have like, since I told you like the total DRI production is really big. That's why even I'm a sponge iron producer, I would be located very nearby to some like 10 of the small induction furnaces. So like usually they are buying inside of the region. You don't need to take it through the whole country. Okay. And if you need to do, for example, you don't have enough, you will source local scrap. Of course, you will not do all this stuff because it's really hard, as you said.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I think we are done with this session. Thank you so much for your attention. And we will come back after the lunch for the committee meetings. So see you, enjoy.
Nice to meet you.